What's up, YouTube? It's Aerith, and I'm here today to talk to you about Augmentation Evoker. So it's finally been announced. The new spec is no longer a rumor, it is official, and it will be coming in 10.1.5. I've been on the PTR testing it a good bit after doing a little bit of theory crafting and kind of research, and I've learned how to play it and wanted to share with you a little bit of what I've learned, as well as talk about kind of what I think about the spec. Is it fun? Is it not fun? Does it feel clunky? Does it feel smooth? We'll get into all of that. Before we jump into it, though, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to my YouTube if you like videos like this one. And also be sure to follow me over at twitch.tv/eyelashtv, where you can probably find me streaming right now because I stream all the time. Yeah, without further ado, though, let's just go ahead and get straight into it. Spec is really cool. So yeah, here I am on my evoker. And I went ahead and ported over my character. And I'm currently in the augmentation spec. This is the talent build that I've been looking at currently. I've tried a couple of different things. I think that we will definitely see a lot of changes to this. This is just a very preliminary idea of what you might play in a Mythic Plus environment when you are damage oriented. The spec does look as if it will be taking the place of a DPS spec as opposed to taking the place of a healer. Although we do have quite a few healer-oriented support spells, like Symbiotic Bloom, um, and of course the modifier Prolonged Life over here on the right side. I did opt to take all the DPS spells instead, with the idea that the spec is going to be replacing a DPS. Early indications do suggest that the spec is very, very highly tuned towards DPS. Um, and it does look as if it's going to be quite strong. Of course, there's going to be a lot of tuning to come. Just currently in its current iteration on PTR, it does look to be doing and providing quite a lot of damage. So let's talk about how they do that. If you ever heard of the spec dancer in Final Fantasy, I am not a Final Fantasy player. I have a kind of very minor knowledge of how the spec works. But from what I understand, it's quite similar to that. The spec looks to buff your party in various ways and then to extend the duration of those buffs or to maintain high uptime of those buffs. So let's talk about how the spec actually plays. Let's talk about the mini game, so to speak. The primary mini game that this spec has is going to be revolve around a spell called Ebb and Might. This is the most important part of this class, is getting our Ebb and Might buff up on our party. So see me cast it here. And you can see it's adding intellect to this person and to me as well. And you can see the buff over here. So we're going to put Ebb and Might up, the Ebb and Might buff up on the party. And then we're going to look to extend that Ebb and Might, its duration. This is the primary mini game that you will be playing, and almost all of the class revolves around it. With proper play, you can actually get up to 100% uptime of Ebb and Might. So you might be wondering how we do that. What are we doing with the rest of our time? Because obviously you're not just casting Ebb and Might and then AFKing. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to extend our Ebb and Might. And so how do we extend it? Well, we extend it in two ways. Our primary form of extension is a spell called Upheaval. This is our Empower spell. It basically just deals damage and extends the duration of Ebb and Might. We can use this every 40 seconds. So every other Ebb and Might, being the Ebb and Might is a 30-second cooldown, will be buffed by Upheaval. Upheaval also does some damage of its own, and it is of course an Empower spell, fitting the theme of the Drakthir Evokers. Um, its empowerment levels do not change the amount of damage it does currently. It just changes the duration of or the radius of the effect. So at one empowerment level, it will be a 3-yard radius. At maximum empowerment levels, or at 4, it will be a 12-yard radius. So in AoE, you might be looking to empower this fully. And in single target, you will probably just be wanting to send it on one. This is the first way that we are going to extend our Ebb and Might. We'll go ahead and buff that Ebb and Might again. Is with our Upheaval. So the second thing, the way that we're going to be extending our Ebb and Might is with a spell called Eruption. So as you know, all evokers have a resource called Essence. You can see it down here underneath my character's nameplate. It's a little hard to see in this current UI. I apologize. I am on the PTR. So this is not my this is not the UI that I would personally choose. But yeah, hopefully it's serviceable. So we will be using our essence, on our essence to use the spell Eruption. It'll be our primary spender, and it will extend the duration of our Ebb and Might. It also deals some damage. So using these two abilities, We will buff our Ebonite, we will cast an upheaval, and we will spam eruption. And that is how we are seeking to extend our Ebonite. So there is obviously a little bit more to the spec than that. But these three spells kind of serve as the bread and butter of the spec. So what else are we going to be doing? You might be asking. So we're also looking to buff our Ebonite. And one of the primary ways that we do this is through our fire breath. So after every single Ebonite, we will be able to immediately fire breath. They are both on a 30-second timer. So every single fire breath that we use will buff our Ebonite. How, you might ask? Well, fire breath is going to grant the Inferno's blessing for 9 seconds to you and your allies affected by Ebonite, giving their damaging attacks and spells a high chance to deal an additional 10,000 fire damage. So this is similar to the Paladin Blessing, where just their attacks are just going to do increased additional free damage, so to speak. So every single time we Ebonite, we want to immediately fire breath, and then seek to extend our upheaval. And so this is kind of the Ebonite minigame that we're primarily concerned with. Um, we're going to Ebonite, we're going to fire breath, and we're going to upheaval in that window if we are able. We will only be able to get an upheaval in every other window, and then we will of course be spending with eruption. So we do have a number of other abilities. Let's go ahead and talk about them now. The second mini game that we are concerned with is going to be maintaining our two buffs. Our two buffs are called Prescience and Blistering Scales. Blistering Scales looks super cool. I'll go ahead and use it now. That is our Blistering Scales. And this is basically just a tank buff. You can think of it like an Earth Shield. We will be maintaining this, basically pressing it off cooldown on the tank. And what it says is protect an ally with 20 explosive dragon scales, increasing their armor by 30% of your own. Melee attacks against the target cause one scale to explode, dealing damage to nearby enemies near them. This damage can only occur every few seconds. Blistering scales can only be placed on one target at a time. Cast on your enemy's target if they have one. So you can actually target an enemy and press blistering scales, and assuming they're targeting your tank, it'll automatically go on your tank. That's kind of cool. It can save you kind of the mental global of having to click on your tank while you're in the middle of a damage rotation. You can just go ahead and fire it off onto the enemy, and it will end up on your tank. So the second major buff that we're going to be giving is called Prescience, and this is basically just a press it every 12 seconds and forget about it type of spell. So Prescience uptime is going to be it's going to be quite good. We will not have 100% uptime on two players, but we will be juggling this between two players. And what Prescience does is it says grant the ally the gift of foresight, increasing their critical strike chance by 3% and occasionally copying their damage and healing spells at 15% power for 22.5 seconds. So since this is a 12-second cooldown and the buff lasts for 22.5 seconds, as I mentioned, we will be putting it on two players at once. So here we could buff ourselves. And as you can see, we have Prescience. And we'll be going about our business, looking to extend our Ebonite window. And then we will see Presciences coming up again. So we will look to put it on another player. And now both of us will have Prescience. Of course, it will fall off of me first. And then that would mean that I would be my next target. Granted, in an actual Raid or Mythic Plus setting, it is highly unlikely that you will be giving yourself Prescience. You will be giving it to a DPS who will benefit a lot from it. And the reason for that is because of the Prescience second ability, or the Prescience second mode. So it gives critical strike, as we mentioned. It also occasionally copies their damage and healing spells at 15% power for 22.5 seconds. So this is kind of a cool little caveat that you can also use it to copy. It can also copy healing spells. Primarily, we will just be giving this to DPS off cooldown, back and forth. That said, in a high intensity moment, let's say you're fighting someone like Herja, and your healer is going to be falling behind a little bit potentially, you could choose to give the healer that Prescience buff for that duration. It'll give them 3% crit, and it will also give them an extra amplifier to their healing, where there is an occasional chance for their healing spells to be copied or replicated at 15% additional power. So it's actually pretty cool. There's a lot of I think there's a pretty high skill ceiling with this particular ability, and I'm really excited to be using it. So this is kind of pretty much the bread and butter of the spec. One other thing I did want to talk about is our cooldown, Breath of Aeons. So this actually replaces Deep Breath. And what it says is fly to the targeted location, exposing temporal wounds on enemies in your path for 11.2 seconds. Temporal wounds accumulate 21% of damage dealt by your allies affected by Ebonite. then critically strike for that amount as arcane damage. Applies ebb and might for 5 seconds. So this is another way that we can extend our ebb and might, and it also is basically going to deal a lot of damage. The way that this is going to work is we're going to effectively just be sending this when our teammates are sending their cooldowns. Um, yeah, because the more damage your teammates are doing, the more temporal wounds damage is going to accumulate, and then it's going to be replicated. So we're basically going to want to send this when our teammates are sending cooldowns. And there's going to be actually a pretty high skill ceiling on when we're actually popping Breath of Aeons and when we're not popping. When are we going to hold it? Like how long is it on, that Warlock's Infernal? Do I have time to get a Breath of Aeons in right here to line up with, maybe this class is 1 minute, and still make sure that I have it up for the Warlock's, Tyrant window or something like that, because that's going to be a lot of damage, and we know that. So there'll be some really, really interesting interactions and ways to interface with Breath of Aeons. I'm very excited about it. Personally, I think it's going to be super cool. Uh, and yeah, it definitely is going to provide us with quite a lot of damage. So I did want to go ahead finally before we end this video and kind of show you what the rotation is going to look like. We talked a little bit about it. Let's see what it looks like in paper. As you can see, we got a lot of other evokers here, all very excited to be practicing the new spec. So first things first, before we enter combat, we would be looking to put up our spicy earth shield, blistering scales. We'd be looking to buff prescience on ourselves, and then we're going into combat. First thing we're going to do is we're going to ebb and might. We're then going to use upheaval on these dummies. We can tip the scales into a fire breath. And now we're just looking to spam eruption to extend the duration of that ebb and might. As soon as we're out of eruption, we can fish for more procs of ebb and might. I'm sorry, as soon as we're out of essence, we're going to fish for more essence burst procs so that we can press eruption more. We can do this either with living flame or with Azure Strike. And spamming eruption. As you can see, we're very easily able to extend our ebb and might window. You can actually get 100% uptime on this in practice. And that's kind of what the rotation is going to look like. Ebb and might into our upheaval, into our fire breath, and then spamming eruption. We'll also be maintaining prescience and making sure that we always have a blistering scales on the tank. That's the basic gist of it. So let's say that let's take a look at what it's gonna look like when we are in cooldowns, when our team is in cooldowns. So when our team is in cooldowns, we're gonna do the same thing. Pre-pull, we're looking to buff our blistering scales. We're looking to keep our prescience up. And then the pull is going to start. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ebb and might. Instantly deep breath over everything. We're going to upheaval. We're going to fire breath. And then we're going to start spamming our eruption. We run out of essence, and so we start fishing for more essence burst procs. And then we look to eruption some more. Again, we want to use our leaping flames, and we can also be using our living flame to look for procs if we so desire. And then we have our ebb and might back up. We still have the buff, but we can go ahead and rebuff it. And we can upheaval, and we can fire breath. This is kind of the basic flow of it. I'm not executing the rotation perfectly here because I'm kind of trying to talk about what I'm doing while I'm doing it. A lot easier to do it while I'm just kind of just sitting here AFK and pressing the buttons. But yeah, that is the basic flow of the spec. Let's let our things cool back down quickly, and then I'll just run through the rotation one more time. This time I won't talk over it, and I'll just try and execute the rotation as flawlessly as I can. All right, so let's see here. We're getting all of our cooldowns back. So pre-pull. Boom, into prescience. And we're going to ebb and might. DPS are entering into cooldowns. Upheaval. Tip the scales into a fire breath. Living flame for leaping frames. Eruption. And this is what it's going to look like, basically. It's a lot of eruption spamming. And we're down bad, so we're just spamming living flames. We get some procs, we get eruption. Okay, we get our ebb and might back. Interruption, weaken upheaval, and fire breath. And we're back to eruption spamming. Of course, maintaining our buffs. And that's about it. That's about the size of it. Um, that's how the class will actually play. As far as like what I think about this class, I think it's currently slated to be a little bit too overtuned. I think that we will have to see how they tune this. The spec also, outside of all of these things that we've been talking about, its primary rotation and so forth, has a lot of utility, which looks frankly very broken. This is the one particular thing I'm a little afraid of. Aspect's favor. This spell seems very, very, very strong. So what this says is Obsidian Scales activates Black Attunement and amplifies it to increase the maximum health by 20% for 13.5 seconds. So we have two attunements as this spec with the Black Attunement and the Bronze Attunement. When you're in a Black Attunement, you and your four nearest allies basically get Fortitude. You have 5% increased health on all five of those players. In a Mythic Plus environment, this is basically just Fortitude. Bronze Attunement, you and your four nearest allies have 10% increased movement speed. So you can swap between these two. It's like a bit of a stance dancing kind of feature. Now whenever we press Obsidian Scales, we're actually going to amplify that, and it's going to increase maximum health by 25% by for 13.5 seconds. This is like an insanely powerful rally because we'll have two charges thanks to Obsidian Bulwark our Obsidian Scales. And every time we press Obsidian Scales, we're going to give all of our entire party 25% increased maximum health. That seems really, really, really powerful to me. It seems too powerful to me. I don't know that something like this has ever been in the game. It just seems like it's a little bit overtuned. I can't see this staying in the game. I'm not really sure how I feel about this. It just basically means that between Zephyr and two charges of Obsidian Scales giving 25% increased health to the full party, you're basically just able to bring like insane defensive utility to the group. And when you're already doing lots and lots of damage, and giving your team lots and lots of damage, it seems a little bit on the broken side. Of course, tuning is going to happen, but it seems like it's going to be very hard to tune a spec that can bring this much defensive capability between Zephyr, two charges of this plus 25% max HP for 13.5 seconds. Also, whenever we press hover, we're giving 40% movement speed to the full party. So it's like a mini roar every time we press hover, which is going to be frequently. That also seems quite strong. We also get a cheat death and defy fate. It says fatal attacks are diverted into a nearby timeline, preventing the damage. And in your death, in this one, the release of temporal energy restores 175,000 health to you and 60,000 health to four nearby allies over 9 seconds. So this is basically just going to be like a really massive heal. If you ever die, you're not going to die. Instead, you're going to get like a nice little hefty chunk of health back, and you're going to do a massive AOE heal to your team. So I think that the defensive capabilities of this class are very, very, very strong. Its offensive capabilities look to be very, very, very strong. Stacking mastery, I've seen people who are doing some math. The math looks very, very good. I don't want to talk specifically about their math. I think that will be a video for another time. But the current tuning, the numerically, we're doing a lot of damage. We're giving a lot of versatility to our teammates, thanks to our mastery. Which says casting an empower spell grants shifting sands to two allies, preferring damage dealers, increasing their verse by 13.5 seconds per 11.2 seconds. So this is a very humble amount of mastery that I have here. If you were to actually stack mastery, I mean, you could be giving up to 20% versatility to two teammates, which is going to A, make them really tanky, B, give them a whole lot of damage. So yeah, I think the spec looks very powerful, and I think it's going to be quite hard to balance. I do have a lot of faith that they'll be able to pull it off, but it's hard to say. I mean, I think there's this interesting dichotomy where if their defensive spells are too strong, then they can't really have too much in the way of offense. To which point you would rather just have a more offensive team in a Mythic Plus environment. And I think the same goes for Raid. You would rather just have a healer if you're really just bringing this for the defensive capabilities. Um, I think it's going to be it's going to be very, very hard to tune in this way. If it is too strong offensively, then they would really need to prune some of this like very powerful defensive utility. I do think in a raid environment, 25% max health, it only hits four people, so not super crazy. That said, you could see yourself in a position where you just bring four of these, so you can like give the 25% max health to your entire team so that your entire team is being buffed by the spec. But who knows? We still have a lot of tuning. This is just an initial thought process that's kind of been running through my head. Overall, the spec feels very fun to play. I think it could be a little bit deeper. I think it could have a few more kind of a little bit more nuance associated with its minigame. But I'm really excited about it. I think it's very cool. Let's hop back over to our hanging out screen. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that you will also drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about Augmentation Evoker. Are you excited to play it? Does it look too strong? Is it too hard to balance? Leave me your opinions, your thoughts, your concerns down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.